Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you. Welcome to IGS webinar series. Now in 7th webinar. Thank you for attending this event in this room. Everybody in this room, and also everybody who participate in using through online everywhere. So IGS now conducting the lunch and talk, which is a very interesting topic. It is about decarbonization in energy transition. Before we go to the presenter and the speakers, allow me to introduce or to mention about our IGS activities in 2020, 2021, and now in 2022. The IGS, Indonesian Gas Society, is a non-profit organization. Is supporting the development of Indonesian gas industry from upstream, midstream to downstream, which include commercial, technical, operational, and also HSSE aspect. So the IGS established in June 2014, and we aim to support the development of Indonesian upstream to downstream gas industry. And we are the member of International Gas Union, or IGU. We conducted several events. Actually, last year we planned to have the LNG Summit in Bali. We call IndoPACIFIC LNG Summit, but because of pandemic COVID-19, so today's lunch and talk is in conjunction with IndoPACIFIC LNG Summit 2021. Our member, the IGS members divided into two categories: the executive members and also ordinary members. The executive members are Pertamina, Mitsubishi Corporation, PGN, Pupuk Kaltim, ENI, Inpex, Pertamina Gas, LG Japan, and PLN Gas and Geothermal. For the ordinary members are ConocoPhillips, Nusantara Regas, Badak LNG, Transgasindo, Pertamina, GTS International, Pertamina Power, Total, Pertamina Hulu Mahakam, Donggi Senoro, Evonik, Go LNG, and Widiawan and Partners. Okay, we have 4 speakers here for today's event. The theme is decarbonization in energy transition. The first speaker would be Professor Dr. Insinyur Tutuka Aryaji, MSc, but because of some reason, he will be replaced by Bapak Bambang Eka. He's a Subcoordinator Technical and migas. So Professor Dr. Engineer Tutu Karyaji, MSc, he is Director General of Migas or Oil and Gas Ministry of Mineral Energy Resources. But now, who will present this topic is Bambang Eka Satria, ST, MKK. So he is Subkoordinator Keteknikan Migas. And the second speaker is Bapak Oki Muraza. He's from Pertamina. He's Senior Vice President or SVP of Research and Technology Innovation. And he was Associate Professor in King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals, Arab Saudi, February 2016 until January 2021. And the third speaker is Sohini Katurji. Sorry if my pronunciation is wrong. Sohini Katurji. She is an energy transition analyst, an energy transition analyst from Prestart Energy. And the fourth speaker will be Engineer Satya Widya Yuda, MSc. The current position is member of National Energy Council or Dewan Energi Nasional. He was Wakil Komisi 1 DPR RI 2018 and 2019, and also Wakil Ketua Komisi 7 DPR RI 2014 until 2018. So these four speakers will be present their experience or their knowledge about decarbonization. And some of them will be online, and only one, Pak Satya, already confirmed that he will be here. So if there is any question for them, just raise hand in the Zoom platform. Also, you can text in the text box, and then I will guide the question along this event. The first speaker will be Bapak Bambang Eka, Subkoordinator Keteknikan Migas, Ministry of Energy Resources. Please, Pak Bambang Eka, are you ready for presenting your slides?
Yes, Pak Salis, thank you.
Please, time is yours.
Okay. Should be me for the share screen, or anyone else could be?
Yeah, we can operate your presentation from here, but Budi, are you ready? Okay, Pak Bambang.
Okay, thank you.
The slide is already there. Please.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Very good afternoon for everyone in this amazing event. Also, thank you very much for the Indonesian Gas Society for this event, and also for the other distinguished speaker. Let me, on behalf of Pak Tutuka Ariazi, to present about this decarbonization in energy transition. Next, please. Ladies and gentlemen, as we know that based on the realization of the energy mix in 2021, we can see in here that the oil and gas still the dominant energy for the Indonesian. We can see the oil is 32%, and also for the natural gas the 80% for the contribution for the energy in the Indonesia, and also the coal is still dominate for the share of the national energy use, and also the utilization of the renewable energy is still very low. In this pie chart, we can see about 11% from the renewable energy for the Indonesian energy mix. And also, Pak Joko Widodo, our president, has been mentioned in the UNFCCC COP21 to have Indonesia have the commitment to reduce the greenhouse gas emission would be our NDC target, national determined contribution target, which will be decrease the greenhouse gas emission into 29% business as usual, and also 41% by the international support in 2030. And also in the leadership summit on climate change in April 2021, mentioned about the energy transition investment through the development of the biofuel, and also development of the industry. It means the lithium battery industry, and also the electric vehicle. And in the COP26 in November 2021, our president mentioned Indonesia will be able to contribute for the faster of the global net zero emission. And also as a presidency of the G20 2022, Indonesia focused in the three main pillars. First is the global health inclusive. The second is digital-based global economic transformation. And the third is the sustainable energy transition. As you can see in here that we have the target for the INDC in the 2030 that will be to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 2030 is around 314 million ton of CO2 equivalent. With the countermeasure 1, it will be our effort, and the second is 4046, countermeasure 2. It means by international support to reduce the greenhouse gas emission in the energy sector. As you can see, the realization of the reduction of the greenhouse gas emission, that our mitigation realization is still achieve the target that you can see in here that all the target has been maintained, and the realization has been fulfilled the target also. Next, please. This is our energy transition roadmap to achieve the net zero emission by 2060 or sooner. The timeline is strategic achievement to get the net zero is on the energy sector. The roadmap is also a joint commitment between the government and also all the stakeholders to achieve a net zero emission. As we can see in here in the oil and gas sector, that for the supply side in 2021 until 2025, that will be gas for the power plant gasification. We have planning to do that is approximately 1.7 gigawatt to convert from the diesel to the gas also, and then in the demand side for the oil and gas is to massively using the fuel gas or BBG for cars. The target will be 100,000 cars, and the second is to expand the city gas infrastructure to 8.2 million hosts in the demand side. And then for the 2026 until 2030, still in the demand side, we will be expand our city gas infrastructure also for the massively using gas for the cars. And also in here, we have the milestone to reduction of the imported LPG with the induction cooker, and also the utilization of the DME. We hope the DME project in South Sumatra will be achieved in the time schedule. And also in 2031 until 2035, for the supply side will be introduced hydrogen utilization, and also no more diesel power plant. And also for the demand side, we'll be explain more about the city gas and also the using the utilization of the fuel gas for the cars. That's the roadmap in the oil and gas energy sector. We can see in here that the utilization of gas will be more and more need to replace the oil, and also to as a backbone to get the net zero emission. Next, please. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the utilization of the oil and gas. As you can see in here from the graph, that the crude oil will be decreased, and also for the natural gas, also we have some decrease, but we have several projects that will be increase the natural gas production. The role of oil and gas, it means that the petroleum is still a current main energy source for the transportation sector, and also the role of natural gas in the energy transition is just transition before the reaching 100% electricity from the renewable energy, and also natural gas as a fuel for the power generation for the intermittent renewable, and also the gas will be used for the domestic fulfillment as a raw material for industry, and also fuel for the residential, and also for the transportation. And also for the production of the oil and gas, we have some issue. First is to achieve the target production 1 million barrel oil per day and 12 BCFD in 2030. And also we have also to mitigate or to reduce the production of the greenhouse gas emission. We have some strategy utilization. First is the optimization of the production from the existing field. The second is transformation of the resource to production. The third is the acceleration of the using EOR from chemical or maybe from CO2. And the fourth is the massive exploration for the huge discovery. The five strategy is the role of the natural gas in the energy transition before we reach the 100% of the power generation from the renewable. The last one is the deployment of the GTS, GTS for the increase the production. Next, please. This is the Indonesian natural gas infrastructure development. As you can see in here, in the eastern part of Indonesia, we develop some small scale LNG shipping terminal to get to make sure that gas will be delivered in time. And also that we have some project in the western part of Indonesia to get the tie-in between the WNTS and the pumping to use gas as utilization in the Rio Islands province. Also, this transmission segment plan will be KK Semangke into Dumai, and then the WNTS pumping that I mentioned before, and the Cirebon Semarang will be a project for the infrastructure in gas sector. Next, please. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned before, one of the strategy to increase the production is using the GTS HCS. As you can see in here, this is the potential storage CO2 capacity for the GTS and GTOS. This graph basically came from the study from the R&D agency, Lemigas. As you can see here, we have the potential capacity of the depleted oil and gas reservoir for the GTS and GTOS is around 2 gigaton of CO2. And also for the potential of saline aquifer for the GTS is around 9.6 gigaton of CO2. From the potential of the saline aquifer actually came from only from the two basin, from the South Sumatra Basin and West Java Basin. We have opportunity to develop or study another potential offsite aquifer in other basin. And also we can see here in the graph that for the depleted oil and gas reservoir, we still study to get the potential capacity in South Sumatra Basin, also in Natuna Basin. Next, please. This is the status of the GTS and the GTS project in Indonesia. We have 10 projects. It's been existing project. Then first is the Tangguh enhanced gas recovery using the CO2 from the production facility and then inject again in the reservoir to get the increasing production of the gas production. The status of this project is in a preparation, and also for the target of the on-stream schedule will be 2026. That can be stored the CO2 potential around 25 into 32 million of ton CO2 for the 10 years. Second one is Gundi, CCUS or CO2 enhanced gas reservoir. Status is on a pre-FEED study, and we hope the target for the on-stream in 2026 that could be stored the CO2 around 2 and 3 million ton CO2 for the 10 years. And also in Gundi, we still have storage capacity 70 million ton CO2 that we saw that the Gundi still have potential to achieve more CO2 from another source, such from the power plant or another industry. The third is Sukhwati, CO2 EOR. This is the target will be 2026 into 2027 for the pilot test, and the full scale in 2031. Will be stored potentially 40 million ton CO2 for the 15 years. And also the others projects like Sakakemang, Abadi, and also the fuel ammonia production for the CCS, and then is Kalimantan CCS study, and then study for the CCS for coal to DME, and also Arun CCS and Ramba CCS. That all project is still on the study phase. Next, please. This is the potential collaboration on the GTS in Indonesia. We hope that international supporting for the development of the GTS and GTS hub and also clustering. And the second one is development of carbon utilization to produce methanol. And the third is development of the blue hydrogen and also blue ammonia plus GTS. This is the way of the hub clustering regional CO2 management. That the CO2 is came from the source like a power plant, also another industry, and then the source will be using the existing pipeline or new pipeline connect into the oil field or gas field using the CO2 for the EOR or maybe EGR or maybe the GTS. Next, please. This is about the carbon cap and trade. As we know, the GTS and GTS project should be economic for the deployment. So one thing should be considered is about the carbon cap and trade. As we know, the carbon trading has the potential to support the project development of the GTS and GTS from the trading of generated the carbon credit. This is schematic about the cap and trade. Carbon cap and trade. We can see in here that we have the offset for the cap. If the emission is higher than the offset, so will be some transaction to buy or sell, or maybe we can put tax on the greenhouse gas emission. Next. This is the study from the Global GTS Institute in 2021 when this graph is show about the how to deploy the GTS and GTS project. This is the policy or maybe the enabler thing to make the GTS and GTS project is feasible to deploy. In here we can see that the large scale GTS development is mostly driven by the EOR and the low cost capture. And also one thing should be considered is a carbon tax value. We can see in Norway for the Sleipner and Snowfit project, the carbon tax will be around 543 Norwegian krone per ton CO2. It will be around 50 ton per ton, 50 US dollar per ton for the CO2. This ecosystem or carbon tax will be pushed the oil and gas contractor should use the CO2 for the GTS or GTS project. And also this another important thing is about the low cost capture and also the regulatory requirement to make some another thing to deploy the GTS and GTS project. As we know, the carbon tax in Indonesia is around $2 per ton CO2. Okay, next. This is the regulatory we still drafting about the GTS and GTS in Indonesia. We hope this regulation will be enacted in these years, because this all the oil and gas company waiting for this ministerial regulation. The scope is divided into 4 aspects. First is technical, second is business, the third is legal, and the fourth is the economic. For the technical is mentioned about the monitoring and MRV, and also the goal setting for the site specific based on the reference standard and good engineering practice. The second aspect is the business scenario based on the product. It means that for the GTS and GTS project will be based on the production sharing contract of oil and gas block, and also regulate about the source of CO2, not only from the oil and gas, but also could be came from the other industry through the business to business with the oil and gas contractor. The legal aspect is regret about the proposal of the GTS and GTS project as part of plan of development or POD, and also mention about transfer of responsibility and other things. For the economic aspect, this ministerial regulation is regulate about the potential of third-party funding, like from GCM, and also regulate about the fiscal incentive should be applied for the GTS and GTS project, and also the potential of carbon credit monetization based on our presidential regulation number 98 2021, and also regulate about the revenue from the carbon credit in the production sharing contract. This ministerial regulation is formulated by team. Team consists of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, and from the SKK and BPMA, and also from the ITB, Gas, and also from the IPA, and also from the stakeholder in the oil and gas contractor. We have several international discussion or need some input, comment from the international organization, so the government, public, or also private institution from the country of Australia, South Korea, Japan, and Europe, United States of America, and also Canada. So we hope this ministerial regulation based on the international standard or international legal basis. Next. I think that's all from our side regarding the theme of the decarbonization in the energy transition. Thank you, Pak Salis. I think this from us.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Bambang Eka Satria, for presenting this very interesting and also urgent, important topic about CCUS and also CCS. And I think it's related to our next speaker from Pertamina, because Pertamina also is doing the research and also the study, in-depth study in CCUS and also CCS. And I think you, Pak Bambang, already mentioned about the aspect or the scope of this legal the legal aspect on this CCUS and CCS, and I read from the newspaper, online newspaper, that it's should be on April 1st this year, 2022, but I think it is deferred to November or September in this year. So the President decree, I think, will be deferred to September or October, I think. This for legal aspect. About technical aspect, business aspect, and also economic aspect, I think Pertamina will present their view about the CCUS and CGS. So please, the next speaker, Bapak Oki Muraza. The current position is Senior Vice President of Okay, the current position is SVP Research and Technology Innovation, PT Pertamina Persero. Please, Pak Oki, are you ready for presenting your slides?
Yes, Pak Salis. Is it clear, Pak?
Yes, your voice is clear here.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pak Salis Aprilian, the Vice Chairman of Indonesian Gas Society. The other speakers, Pak Bambang Eka Satria from Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, Pak Satya from National Energy Council, Madam Suhini from Prestart Energy. Ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So in the next 15 or 20 minutes, I will try to highlight our activities in Pertamina Research and Technology Innovation. This is the research R&D functions in Pertamina Holding on decarbonization. So as we have from the title of this discussion this afternoon, this webinar is on the decarbonization. So I will try to cover the complete decarbonization initiatives within Pertamina Group. And then, of course, there will be a few slides about the CCUS itself. So decarbonization and energy transition is basically the important global topics nowadays, especially for energy company, integrated energy company like Pertamina. So we would like to start with the alignment with the policy and the target that we have from the government, as already presented by Pak Bambang. Basically, from our government, we have the national grant strategy in order to increase the portion of renewable energy in 2025 and also in 2050. As we can see that we can expect to reach about almost a quarter of our energy mix will be renewable in 2025. And then we will reach more than 1/3, 31% by 2050. Yeah. Of course, this is a very challenging target. So we would like to show our commitment in the coming slides. How can we contribute to this energy transitions within national green energy strategy? And we need to make a note also here that basically, even though by volume, by portions, the renewable will be increased, and then the oil and gas basically is still having very strong portion, for our economics in the next decades. Yeah, so this is our alignment with the Grand National Energy Strategy. On the left-hand side, you can see the challenges that we have. Basically, we are a net importing country in terms of energy, and then we try to formulate the solutions that we can have within Pertamina Group. Yeah. So in terms of productions, to help the government to reach the 1 million barrel oil per day, yeah, we have several initiatives, including the unconventional gas. Then we have some initiatives to improve the production from mature fields, such as enhanced oil recovery, etc., etc. And then for the downstream business, we have the revamping, so-called RDMP. And then we have also a new refinery, so-called GRR. And also we would like to expand to the petrochemical business. And then we have also different initiatives, basically to monetize local resources, like the conversion of low-rank coal to dimethyl ether, production of methanol, etc., etc. And then in terms of gas, we are trying to improve the city gas for households, and then we'd like to keep our portfolio also for the downstream LNG. Yeah. So now we are trying to develop different LNG business and capabilities, including to mix the renewable gas together with the LNG. Yeah. And then, of course, we need to increase our IPP portfolio, be it gas, IPP, Java 1, for instance, geothermal, and solar. And then on this slide, basically, we can see the achievement that we have so far. So we are committed to have 30% of reductions by 2030 in terms of emissions. Yeah, this is as compared to our baseline in 2010. Yeah, for scope 1 and 2. Yeah, so scope 1 is basically the CO2 emitted by our production facilities. Scope 2 is basically CO2 emitted from the electricity that we purchase from national electricity company. And we can reach so far very good reductions up to 27%. Yeah, and we are convinced that basically in the next coming few years we can reach the target in order to get 30% of reductions by 2030. Yeah. This is in terms of the CO2 emission target. And currently, we are also developing the net zero strategy. And then, how we reach these reductions? Yeah, this is further defined on this slide. As you can see that here we have different initiatives that we have in order to have reductions in the CO2 equivalents. Yeah. We started with the one of the best way to reduce the CO2 emissions by installing more green electricity, because our country has a limited capacity in terms of green electricity. So we'd like to expand our geothermal capacity from 672 megawatts to more than 1,100 megawatts in the coming few years. And then, of course, we have the blending with diesel. Yeah, this fatty acid methyl ester, biodiesel. This is also contributing to our CO2 emissions. We installed the CO2, be it on the rooftop of our fuel stations. Yeah, you can start seeing some of the green fuel stations in Jakarta. And also we will have some solar farms, yeah, such as solar PV to reduce the fossil fuels in Rokan, etc. And then, of course, we have the green refinery development. And then we improve the quality of our fuel in program Langit Biru. Yeah. Then, of course, we have CCUS implementations. Yeah. We will have slides focus on the CCUS. And then we are also exploring the potential step-out business, such as hydropower. And we are considering to improve our capacity on the natural-based solutions. Yeah, we will have also further explanation for this, and of course, energy efficiency, utilization of flare gas, and other initiatives. So this is the helicopter view for our main initiatives. Now, this is the further explanations about our contributions to reduce the emissions for the NDC, yeah, nationally determined contributions. So we reach 27% reductions. Yeah, how did we reach this very good number? So here, basically, we can see the initiatives that we have. We have the campaign for flare gas utilizations, be it in the upstream business. We call it SHU, subholding upstream, and also in refinery, RNP, refining and petrochemical subholding, in order to utilize this flare gas for energy consumption, fuel utilizations, or even to sell the gas for customer. Yeah, this is having good portions in our contributions to it. So thank you, Pak Salis. So yeah, so we were discussing about the strategy to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, Pak Salis and ladies and gentlemen, which has been obtained by flare gas utilization, switching from liquid to gas, improvement by energy efficiency, and some other activities, yeah, be it in the upstream and also in the geothermal subholding. And then the energy transition and decarbonization is also about commitments on capital expenditure. Here we would like to show that Pertamina has very strong commitments for the renewable energy. Yeah, we can see here that we are going to spend 14% of the capex for gas and renewable energy. Yeah, this is basically considered as one of the highest for a national energy company, and also even higher than some of the IOC, yeah, international oil company. The commitment that we have for new and renewable energy. And then about the strategic projects that we have, we can see it on this slide. Yeah, the peak of the decarbonization will be hydrogen business. So we try to develop our green hydrogen from geothermal that we have. And then we have indeed the bioenergy, as Indonesia has a very huge opportunity and potency for the bioenergy, from green refinery, bioblending, bioethanol, second generation bioethanol from the waste, etc. And then we have also solar, wind, and hydro. Yeah, these are some of our projects. In terms of geothermal, we already mentioned that we would like to reach more than 1,100 megawatts by 2026. For the ecosystem of electric vehicles, we contributed or we participated in the IBC, Indonesia Battery Corporations, in order to have 140 gigawatt hour in 2029. In addition to that, we are also building charging station or SPKLU, or battery swap or SPBKLU, etc. CCUS, we are having engagement with major players in CO2 capture, utilization, and storage. And then we have also emission reductions and decarbonization initiatives.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Slide is freeze over here.
Oh,
Move to.
yes. Is it okay now, Pak?
Yes. Yeah, this is slide number 10. Yeah. Is it right?
Yes. Now this is slide number 9.
All right. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So this is basically in a nutshell, the activity that we have within Pertamina Group, mostly for in the subholding of power and new and renewable energy, PNRE. We can see on the left side, we have the natural-based solutions with PTPN, Perkebunan Nusantara and Perhutani for natural-based solutions. We have numerous activities for EV ecosystems with Foxcons, Gogoro, Gesits, etc. Yeah, basically to have different business models to support the EV ecosystems. We have clean LNG initiatives to mix the renewable gas with the LNG. This with Japanese counterpart. We have also the other hydrogen projects with different partners. And of course, CCUS, this is our one of the busiest activities in our upstream research. Basically, we are doing a lot of engagement collaborations for CCUS, like ExxonMobil, Mitsui, a lot of counterparts within this framework. And then we have also green industrial clusters to provide green electricity for industry. And then we can also see on further details about the hydrogen and biofuels business within Pertamina Group. Yeah, for hydrogen, we started with 100 kilogram per day for green hydrogen plant in Ulubelu in Lampung. This is basically to utilize green electricity from geothermal. And then we are also considering to have business on the exporting the hydrogen, with our foreign counterparts. And then for biorefinery and biodiesel, I think we are familiar with most of this, the 100 biodiesel production trial in Dumai and Cilacap refineries. So basically, we managed to have the D100, and then we are expecting to export this premium fuel, because this is almost a zero sulfur with very good quality, and of course the price will be high. So we are trying to export it. Then we have also infrastructure for a green refinery, up to be it in the Cilacap and also in Plaju. And then other initiatives, basically to support the government initiatives. We have the nickel resources, in which that we try to produce battery in Indonesia, so EV ecosystems. And then we have also lowering coal, in which that we'd like to produce dimethyl ether, in order to reduce our dependency on the LPG imports. For the EV ecosystems, we are building charging stations and battery swap stations, and we'd like to also to produce the battery pack, from the battery cell, which will be produced by IBC, Indonesia Battery Corporation, or Indonesia Battery Holding. Then for dimethyl ether, we are agreed to have collaboration with about 6 coal suppliers, and then basically we are developing business models and negotiations, etc. And also we expect the supporting regulation from the government. And then CCUS, as mentioned by Pak Bambang Eka, indeed this is very, very busy activities in our research functions. Yeah, we are exploring both utilization and also sequestration. Utilizations, for instance, yesterday we visited our pilot plant for CO2 to product to precipitated calcium carbonate in Padang, and we expect that we will have more research on the utilization, utilization of CO2. And then we have also numerous initiatives to have carbon sequestration by having algae cultivations, mangrove, etc., for natural-based solutions. In terms of CCS and CCUS, we have also two different scenarios. Yeah, the first one is basically only storage. Yeah, only storage. For instance, in this case is Gundi. Yeah, and then we have also enhanced recovery. Yeah, with some of the companies that we have. So we have many engagements with the Japanese counterparts. We have here, we can see the MOU, but we have a lot more MOU that we signed recently. So we are very supportive in order to have more CCUS studies in Indonesia. And indeed, we are also getting support from the Ministry of Education and Culture and also Ministry of Finance in terms of financings. And of course, we expect to have support from our counterparts, yeah, from JAPEX and other Japanese counterparts, and also from international energy company such as here we can see ExxonMobil, but we are developing more engagement these days. And this is about natural-based solutions. Indeed, the concern for CCUS is not only the technology but also the financing. Yeah, we are still developing. Pak Bambang Eka mentioned that we are still working on the regulations, verifications, etc. So in the meantime, we are also developing the natural-based solutions. And this is in terms of cost of carbon offset, this is one of the lowest. Yeah, and then we expect that by having this, we can maintain huge carbon sequestration with limited capex. Yeah, so we can have more plantations with affordable capex, because at the end we need to pass the cost of the sequestrations to customers. So we would like to make sure that the energy is affordable. And here we have some of the challenges that we have for decarbonizations. The technology, it's one of them. Of course, in terms of CCUS, for instance, we are looking forward to have different studies, engagements with different partners, starting from capture. Yeah, there are different scenarios for low concentration of CO2, such as power plant, or high concentrated CO2, which is released from the acid gas treatment. And then transportation and also injections. And the injection also will be explored in different avenues. For instance, not only for storage, but also for enhanced recovery. And then economic feasibility, this is also quite challenging. We have some economic calculations for some of the big CCUS projects that we have. Yeah, still we are we need to improve, and we need to suppress the cost, yeah, in order to make it feasible. And then access and infrastructure, this is including the locations, etc., etc. So basically, we can plan the drivers to support decarbonizations, starting from the policies, yeah, to support And then financing, we have discussion with numerous financial institutions, ADB, World Bank, and others, yeah, which may help us to support the projects. And then carbon credits and market mechanism. Yeah, this we are having quite a lot of discussion with Japanese counterparts, and also more partners will discuss about this. And of course, technology. Yeah, technology is very important as one of the pillars in decarbonization, including CCUS. And then we'd like to close the presentation from research and technology innovation in Pertamina. Basically, these days, until November this year, we are contributing to Business 20. So in Business 20, we are developing policy paper, basically, starting how can we accelerate the energy transitions, and then how to ensure just and affordable transitions, and then how to ensure global cooperations to enhance energy security. As you can see nowadays, with the geopolitics tension that we have in Europe, the energy security is very big topic nowadays. Yeah, so we would like to ensure that there will be global cooperations on energy security. I think those are our initiatives, including CCUS and green or sustainable energies, and some other initiatives to have decarbonizations. We will be more than happy to discuss it within the Q&A session. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Pak Oki Muraza, SVP Research and Technology Innovation, PT Pertamina Persero. The next speaker, she's from Prestart Energy. Her name is Sohini Katerji. She is currently as an analyst of energy transition. So she handles research on global CCUS market trends, including the supply-demand value chain, carbon policies, encompassing pricing, incentive fund CCUS project landscape, and also she's doing the research and all the players and subsurface sequestration of the carbon dioxide. She holds a master's degree in applied geological science from Jadavpur University, India. So, Sohini, please, time is yours.
Thank you, Salis. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yeah, thank
Very
you so
clear.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for the orientation, as well as to my co-speakers for such a great presentation. I'll quickly share my screen, and please let me know if it is visible, and then we can start with it.
Yes, it's clear.
Yeah. So what we are going to discuss today is the CCUS landscape, mainly from the view of Southeast Asia, and with a deep dive into the Indonesian market. So I have seen great presentation given by my co-speakers on the overall scenario of CCUS in Indonesia. What we are going to present now is more of what actually the current scenario looks like and the market trends that we have analyzed. So I will quickly dive into the agenda for discussion today. So we will start with giving an overview of the Southeast Asian CCUS market in the global landscape of what it actually looks like now. And then we will dive into what are the driving factors or the key driving factors for the technology deployment in any region, and where does Southeast Asia basically lies in that, including Indonesia. And then we will further dive down to the regional share of CCUS in Southeast Asia in the Asian continent, followed by the cost analysis of the same projects in the Southeast Asian region. And finally, on the regional basis, we will do a benchmarking of these projects in terms of what are the main company segments who are dominating, the carbon source, and the key fate of the CO2 captured, meaning whether it is used for utilization or storage purpose. Post that, we will dive into further into the national Indonesian landscape of CCUS, where we will provide an overview of what current scenario in the country looks like in terms of strategy, support, and the key necessities for the further deployment, followed by a map showing the potential CO2 storage sites, followed by the key players and the projects in the country, and finally an outlook of the technological deployment in the country in the next few years in the global demand landscape. So let us quickly jump into our content. Okay. So the chart on the left shows us a statistical representation of the count of CCUS projects split by their region, which shows that Southeast Asia currently comprises of 5% of the total projects currently announced in terms of both operational and upcoming. Now, what we have presented here are only the large scale projects, and we have excluded any small or demonstration scale projects, as well as potential projects which are still not firm, as well as the MOUs. Now, if we look at the cost associated with these projects on a pie split, which we have shown here in terms of their capex expenditure, Southeast Asia comprises of only 2% of the total cost. Now, although it comprises of 5% of the projects, the cost is definitely, we see, is comparatively much lesser. This is because of the fact that in Southeast Asia, most of the projects that we see are firstly a single asset, that means standalone asset projects. We do not have many cluster projects, although there are plans of some potential cluster projects, like say in Singapore, but still now all the projects that are announced are single standalone assets. And the second reason is mainly the projects that are there in the region are onshore, meaning the capture, the storage, and pertaining to that, the transportation facilities, which are mostly pipelines or trucks, are onshore. And also another reason for comparatively lower capex is the CO2 source associated with the projects are mainly gas processing facility. So that's why, even though we see that it comprises of a good number of 5% of the projects, the cost is comparatively lesser compared to the other counterparts. Moving next. Okay, so now let us try to understand that what are the key driving factors of deployment of CCUS in a region, irrespective of where the technology is being deployed. So we have mapped down 4 of the key driving factors in this landscape. The first being the existence of large stationary point source emission assets. Now, presence of large point source emission assets, say in industry, energy, waste, or power sectors, make it a very attractive market for CCUS, because most of these sectors consist of hard to abate, the greenhouse gas emissions, and CCUS seems to be a long-term solution if you still want to continue operating these facilities, but do not want the greenhouse gas, mainly CO2, to go into the atmosphere. Now, Southeast Asia has a very good position in terms of this particular criteria, because the country has, or the region, Malaysia, Indonesia, and majority of the countries have been reliant on fossil fuels like coal and hydrocarbon for a huge number of decades in the past, and also going to be dependent on it in the coming decades. Meaning that we have large emission intensive LNG sectors, coal power plants, mineral metal productions in the industrial sector. That makes it very attractive market for the deployment of this technology. The second point, that is one of the key drivers, is access to potential storage locations, or the possibility of selling the CO2 for utilization purposes like hydrocarbon recovery or any other valuable products. Now, what we know today is that the CO2 that is mainly captured, the utilization part of things other than enhanced hydrocarbon recovery, is mainly in R&D phase, meaning it has not been quite commercially feasible, and it is still in study phase all over the world. So one of the potential solutions that is deployed in CCUS is the underground reservoirs in terms of, say, depleted oil and gas fields or saline aquifers that form very attractive position where you can actually store the carbon dioxide. And presence of this kind of storage sites close to the emission points make it more attractive for deployment of this technology quite easily. Now, sometimes what companies do is that to reduce the project risk, they sell the CO2 to companies who actually store the CO2 underground or use it for any other uses like enhanced hydrocarbon recoveries or any other uses. Now, in terms of Southeast Asia also, there is ample amount of storage sites identified in depleted oil and gas fields and saline aquifers throughout the region, like in Malaysia, Indonesia, and other countries as well. And this definitely form a key driver for deployment of this technology in this region. Firstly, definitely, since the region has been quite there in the oil and gas business for quite a significant time, decades of knowledge and expertise on underground reservoirs, the different characteristics kind of reduces the risk factor associated as well. So that also forms a very favorable factor for Southeast Asian CCUS deployment. The third driver is the potential government initiatives or investments like policies, credits, dedicated funds, regulations, etc. Now, this definitely is a major key driver for CCUS deployment in any region, because this is quite an immature technology still, and like with any other immature technology, deployment on a large scale of such methodologies require the help of government. Now, as in Southeast Asia, definitely, although we do not have quite prolific regulations or finances dedicated to CCUS, but they are in progress. Like my co-speakers mentioned that the regulations in Indonesia are currently in progress, which will be dedicated to CCUS, and that will definitely help boost the technological development on a large scale in this region. However, in addition to the regulations, we also have some planned implementation of ETS, which is a kind of carbon pricing across nations like Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, with a carbon tax that is already implemented in Singapore. In addition to that, we have also seen some of the funds are there, like Singapore has a dedicated fund for deployment of CCUS technology. So these are definitely some of the key boosters for technology. And in the future, when actually regulations specific to CCUS comes online, then it will be a huge momentum. The CCUS in Southeast Asia will gain definitely a huge momentum. And the last key driver in this is the existence of infrastructure as well as relevant expertise within the value chain. So it is definitely a very advantageous position for any country or any region to already have existing pipelines as well as injection wells that can be further repurposed for the use of CO2 transportation and finally injection. So and sometimes it is at comparatively lower cost than the building new infrastructure. Definitely we need to look into certain conditions or certain improvements to the pipelines and the injection well so that it is suitable for CO2 transport and finally storage. But having them in place is definitely an advantageous position. Now, if we look in terms of Southeast Asia, although it has little to no CO2 infrastructure, but what it has is that a huge network of oil and gas infrastructure in terms of pipelines mostly that can be definitely repurposed and this and used for the transportation of the CO2 from their capture to the storage point. In addition to that, having been in the oil and gas business for a long time also gives them an advantage of having a skilled workforce, as well as the knowledge of how to operate this value chain. So that definitely puts Southeast Asia on a much upper hand. And that is how we see that Southeast Asia definitely has a very good position in terms of the major drivers for deployment of CCS. Next, okay, now let us try to deep dive more into the Asian continent landscape. So here, if we see the pie split of the regional share of CCUS projects in Asia, Southeast Asia comprises of 24% of the total projects in the region, behind East Asia, which is mainly dominated by China, and then we have South Asia, which is mainly dominated by India. And then if we try to see this 24% of these projects in terms of their cost associated, meaning the capex expenditure, so capture comprises of the most, that is the 45% of the total cost associated with the projects in the region, followed by storage, which is mainly in depleted oil and gas fields now, either for enhanced hydrocarbon recovery or permanent storage. And then we have transport that comprises of the lowest, that is 21% of the total value chain, where most of the transportation facilities in Southeast Asia are onshore pipelines and trucks, although we do have offshore facilities as well, like for example in Malaysia, where the projects that are mainly announced are completely offshore. Now, if we try to see the same cost in terms of their service segment, meaning what type of contracts or what type of segments or suppliers are basically dominating this project landscape, EPCI dominates it by a far margin of 36%. So within EPCI, we have segments like equipment, engineering, procurement, construction, installation, etc. And this is across the entire value chain: capture, transport, and storage. Next forms the internal, which is 21% of the total cost, followed by subsea, that is 12%. So this is mainly related to where the storage locations associated with the projects are offshore, mainly in Malaysia, where both the projects, that is the Kasawari CCS of Petronas as well as the Langleba of PTTP, are both offshore projects. Then we have other segments as well, like operational and professional services, that comprises of 9% of the total cost. Well services, so mainly related to the injection wells, drilling, tools associated with that, that comprise of 6% of the cost, followed by maintenance and services. Seismic cost, again related to the storage. Transportation and logistics, related to the transportation part of the value chain. And finally, rigs and drilling contractors, that is mainly related to the storage as well. So this is what it looks like now currently in terms of the announced CCUS projects, and what we have shown the statistics excludes any small or R&D projects as well as potential projects that is not yet confirmed and the MOUs. Okay. Now let us try to benchmark these projects, this 24% of the projects that we have seen in Southeast Asia, in terms of some segments like first the company segment, meaning that what kind of companies are basically dominating the landscape now, where as clear by the statistics, INOCs are clearly dominating by a huge margin in the region by 61.4%. Companies like Petronas, PTTP, Pertamina are the key names in this sector, followed by energy majors, which comprise of 16%, where we have companies like Shell and BP, who actually have firmly announced projects in the region. ExxonMobil also has plans, but these are still in planned or potential phase. So what we again have represented here are the projects that are completely firmed and confirmed. And they have well-established capture, transport, and storage. Next is followed by other industrial companies and integrated companies like Repsol. In terms of carbon source, meaning from where actually they are capturing the CO2 from, gas processing, mainly LNG facilities, are again dominating the landscape by a huge margin by 61.5%, meaning that most of the projects that we see today are mainly capturing the CO2 through different technologies from gas processing facilities. It is followed by ammonia production, chemical production, and other sectors like paper and pulp production as well. Now, if we see the third category, meaning what these projects actually do with the captured CO2, meaning what is the key fate of the captured CO2, storage is again the dominant key fate of what we actually see with the captured CO2 being done. And by storage, as I mentioned in my previous slide, it's mainly depleted or near depletion oil and gas fields, meaning the late life oil and gas fields, suitable for enhanced hydrocarbon recovery like EGR and EOR, and also the depleted oil gas fields, which are completely depleted of hydrocarbons now and are used for permanent sequestration of CO2 underground. It is followed by another segment, which is again emerging quite large, mainly dominated by Indonesian landscape, is enhanced hydrocarbon recovery, wherein we see most of the projects that are announced in Indonesia has a key amount of it being used for EHR purpose. Other than that, we have also seen projects that some are in evaluation right now, meaning these are very far-sighted projects, and the company has not yet decided what it is actually going to do with the CO2, whether it is used for storage or EHR or any other utilization purpose. And the last segment is fertilizer production. And again, I would like to highlight what I have showed here are only the large scale farm projects, which have already quite established the value chain from capture to transport to storage or utilization. Okay. So this was the last slide on the regional landscape. Now I will quickly dive into what the Indonesian market is currently looking like. So let us begin with that. So this is a diagrammatic representation of the Indonesian CCUS market, of what it is looking right now in terms of strategy, support, what is the value chain, and the necessities. So in terms of strategy, what we have observed in the companies are doing in Indonesia are, first, they're definitely establishing strong collaboratory efforts like memorandum of understanding or MOUs to explore CCUS opportunities together, like collaborating with foreign companies like ExxonMobil, Japanese players, etc., to again jointly collaborate in the technological development. And second, along with this MOUs or collaboratory efforts, they are also exploring opportunities to establish industrial clusters with CO2 capture prospect. Now, Indonesia has a well-established infrastructural availability, and also the carbon sources as well as the sequestration points make it quite a viable, I would say, a situation kind of a thing to be deployed for industrial cluster projects instead of just standalone assets. Although we do have seen industrial cluster projects coming up in other parts of Southeast Asia, like in Singapore, but in terms of Indonesia, it's still in exploration phase, and we still do not have any firmly announced industrial cluster project announced in this respect. Now, in addition to that, the main plan of the final fate of CO2 captured in Indonesian landscape looks like enhanced hydrocarbon recovery. Although there is definitely an uptake of permanent sequestration in Indonesia, but it looks like the major plan is enhanced hydrocarbon recovery. Now, the strategy that I have mentioned here is mainly applicable across the CCS part of things, that is capture, transport, and storage. And in this model in storage, I have also included the enhanced hydrocarbon recovery as well, because as we all know, although it is an utilization, but it basically stores the carbon dioxide in underground reservoirs only, which is kind of a storage purpose only. So, as I mentioned, the strategy applies across the capture, transportation, and storage part of the value chain. And in capture, the major carbon source that we see today are energy sector, as I have previously defined, mainly LNG facilities. There is hydrogen or ammonia production, and others like power generation, like coal power generation as well. Now, the CO2 that is mainly captured has to be transported, of course, and the major transportation routes we see associated with the Indonesian landscape is pipelines, mainly onshore pipelines, as well as trucks, although pipeline is the dominant kind of transportation route. Now, the CO2 that is transported has to be used or has to be either stored or utilized. And the major kind of storage that I have already mentioned is the oil and gas fields. So Indonesia has a good history of oil and gas production for a lot of decades now, giving them an upper hand in de-risking the underground lithologies to a large extent, as well as reducing the risk factor. So that is why we see almost all the projects that are there in Indonesia are either storing CO2 in depleted oil and gas fields or using it for EGR in near depletion oil and gas fields. Now, the saline aquifer potential in Indonesia is also huge. Basins like there is South Sumatra, Java basins, etc., North Sumatra, which has very high potential for saline aquifers, but it is still a potential, meaning we do not yet have any firmly announced project yet that is actually going to use the saline aquifers for CO2 sequestration. Now, the other part which I have highlighted here is utilization, excluding enhanced hydrocarbon recovery, as you can identify from the star marks here as well. Now, what I wanted to highlight with utilization here are valuable products, meaning the CO2 captured for maybe construction of methanol or any kind of other chemicals, concrete in agriculture, etc. Now, this is in Indonesian landscape currently in R&D phase right now, and we have not yet seen any commercial or large-scale project yet announced that will actually use the CO2 on ground to use it for any utilization purpose. Now, the CCS landscape that I have discussed here is liable to support, both in terms of support that it can receive now as well as in the plan in the near future. First, definitely in form of carbon pricing. So Indonesia has an ETS under development with an estimated price of $2 per ton, mainly for the power sector when it starts. And although not in short term, but in the long term, definitely as the price enhances and the cost of emitting is high enough, it can definitely be a booster for CCUS deployment in the sectors which it applies to, which can be power sector as well. And definitely it can help to decarbonize the power sector, which is mainly also one of the dominant emission sectors in Indonesia, mainly driven by coal. Now, in addition to that, in terms of funds or investment, the projects in Indonesia can also get support from schemes like there is joint credit mechanism, which is like a carbon credit market established between Japan and Indonesia. And projects, although there are some specific conditions, but if it's satisfied, it can definitely be a potential candidate for applying for this credit mechanism. Then there are funds like Asian Development CCS Fund, the UNI FCC Climate Funds, as well as the World Bank CCS funds. Now, these funds are applicable on a global basis, with Asian Development Bank mainly for the Asian Development Bank member countries. And this fund has already provided some kind of assistance to the Gudi CCS project, and also can assist some other projects as well. And in terms of regional and national, we have seen that there are a lot of regional initiatives or the strategies that have been developed for the research and development, as well as knowledge sharing platforms by different organizations like ASEAN, Asia CCUS Network, there is ITB, as well as national knowledge sharing platforms, support for research and development that are there on the Indonesian landscape, that are definitely kind of a very good a booster as well as support for deployment of this technology. But one thing that I would like to highlight here is that although definitely there is good amount of support, there is good amount of strategy from the companies, the key necessity for deployment of this technology on a large or mass scale will be the targeted national policies to support this technology, with the addition of international support, as well as any legal and regulatory framework for CCUS in the place. So as my co-speakers mentioned, that there is definitely a regulation that is going to be in place very soon. So post that, we will definitely see that a huge booster or a huge gain in momentum in this technology, and it can help quite effectively to decarbonize the Indonesian emission landscape, mainly driven by the fossil fuels. Okay. Next, okay. So this is a map overview of the potential CO2 storage locations in the Indonesian country, in terms of both oil and gas fields as well as saline aquifers. Now, as per our analysis, not only in short term, but as well as in long term, meaning the assets which are currently in operation, maybe in their midlife, but in the next 30 or 40 years are going to be depleted. So we have performed a study in Rystad where we have identified such fields which in long term are also, in addition to short term, are also suitable for CO2 storage, because as CO2 CCUS or CCS is not a short-term problem, it is going to be a long-term solution as well. So we have identified fields currently which are depleted, suitable for storage right now, as well as assets that are going to be depleted in the next 30 to 40 years. And in addition to the saline aquifers, where we have done a basin-wide analysis, as per our estimates, more than 400 gigatons of capacity is available right now, and as well as in the future, in miscible oil and gas fields and saline aquifers. And this we have shown here in terms of the infrastructural availability, whereas we can see like basins like Java, South Sumatra are definitely going to be some of the key hotspots, not only because it has good storage locations, but also in terms of the infrastructural availability, which is quite prolific in this region. So these are, and also if we see investigate the projects that are currently being there in the CCUS market of Indonesia, most of these projects are associated either in this part or in this part, which are again the key hotspots. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so this is a map overview of this key announced CCUS projects that I have been talking about in Indonesia. Again, these are only the projects that are firm or confirmed, and it doesn't include any small scale or pilot scale projects, as well as the potential MOUs, which in future might get turned into an actual value chain project. So if we see, Pertamina is definitely one of the dominating companies associated with the CCUS landscape of the country. It has projects in Sukhowati, which is again with a capacity of 0.6 MTPA, the Gudhi CCS with 0.3 MTPA, and also it is collaborating in a different type of project, which is the Marubengi Pulp Mill CCS, where it is going to capture CO2 from a pulp mill. In addition to that, and these are mainly gas processing CO2 capture from, but we are also seeing some other kinds of projects, like there is an initiative by the PAU Central Sulawesi, by Panka Amara Utama, which is basically studying the CO2 capture associated with low ammonia production. There is East Kalimantan CCS as well. And the only energy major or the oil major which is associated currently with the farm projects in Indonesia is BP with the Tangguh CCS project. Now again, although there are other companies like ExxonMobil, which is also an energy major, but they are still yet to confirm the entire value chain of CCS. So it's just BP for now who has a farm confirmed project announced in the country. We also have some projects coming up, that like there is the Abadi CCS project, which will be again a full-scale project, but in the region. Okay. Now next, after we have discussed what is the strategy looks like now in Indonesia, where you can store the CO2, what are the projects looking like. Now let us try to investigate that where does Southeast Asia and specifically Indonesia lie in this global CCUS demand. So we have tried to map out the global CCUS demand split by the region in terms of all the projects that are operational, that are going to be operational, and potential projects that have farm plans to come online by 2030. So this is based on just the projects. And if we see, as per our estimate, approximately 14 million tons per annum of CO2 capture and storage should come online by 2030 in Southeast Asia. And in this, Indonesia is estimated to dominate the landscape by 65 to 70% of the total projects in the region. And in Indonesia, CO2 capture from gas processing will dominate, although we will definitely see other sectors like hydrogen production, coal power also come online, but gas processing at least till 2030 will continue to dominate. And in terms of the key fate of CCUS, it is going to be enhanced hydrocarbon recovery, which I've mentioned in my strategy slide. There will be a significant uptake in permanent sequestration as well, but enhanced hydrocarbon recovery will definitely dominate this landscape at least till 2030. And in terms of company segment, Asian IOCs will also be the dominant operator associated with the projects. There will be other companies as well, like we see that ExxonMobil has formed MOUs, BP already has a project. So energy majors will also, who have quite emission intensive assets in Indonesia, also might come have a significant uptake of projects in the region. But Asian IOCs like Pertamina, etc., will definitely dominate the project landscape in Indonesia. Okay. So with this slide, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much to everyone. And yeah, please let me know in the Q&A round if you have any questions.
All right. Thank you, Sony, for your very important presentation, viewing about CCUS and CCS in Southeast Asian. You have presented for Indonesian market too. Okay, is there any question from the floor? I think we can use the chat box here. Okay, please, if anyone will have a question or some clarification to the speakers, because we are waiting for the next speaker. Is Pak Satya Widayuda. he's still on the way here, and his secretary said that maybe in a couple minutes will arrive in this room. But while we waiting for Pak Satya, if you have any question from the floor, from online or this room, please. For your information, that all presentation material will be uploaded in our IGS website, so everyone can download it later on after we have permission from all speakers, of course. Okay, I have a question to Pak Bambang Eka Satria from Dijen Migas. So in your presentation, you mentioned about the target of carbon capture and also zero emission in 2050, I think, as our government also committed in last COP26. In your opinion, is that target will achieve as we plan, or maybe a bit late that year, 2050? And what the reason? Maybe Pak Bambang Eka Satria, can you answer my question? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Basalis, for the question. Yes, we're still optimistic to achieve the net zero emission in 2060 or sooner, because from today we have several projects that will be contribute to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, such GTS and GTS for the oil and gas industry, and also for the renewable industry. We develop more aggressive to geothermal energy, Salis. So basically, for the energy sector, the most contribute CO2 emitter is from the electricity sector. We have several plans. First is to switch using the fossil fuel with the renewable. The second maybe will be, shut off the coal power plant. We have a plan to do that. And the third is maybe for the household or the residential, we will be apply some energy efficiency for the electricity appliance, such like stove, maybe, and etc. I think we're still optimistic. We can keep the target, Pak Salis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Bambang Eka Satria, for your answer and your comment. About the price for the carbon credit that you mentioned, about $2 per ton CO2. Yeah, compared to the other countries, this is a range about 40. 50, even there is a $90 per ton CO2. So can you comment on that? I mean, how this $2 per ton CO2 can drive the company that reduce the CO2 in here? Maybe, or what is the consideration of that price, the credit, when the carbon tax for $2 per ton CO2?
Thank you, Pak Salis. Yes, like as I mentioned before, that we have the carbon tax will be implied in this April, I think, for the $2 per ton CO2. Exactly is for the electricity sector, for the power plant, Pak Salis. That will be gradually include all the sector until 2025. But for the price is, for the starting point, the number is maybe low, Pak Salis, but to encourage deployment of the GTS, not only the carbon tax as tools, Pak Salis, we develop also the emission trading system, Pak Salis. So the emission trading system will be like to encourage the company to do some the mitigation of the greenhouse gas emission, Pak Salis. I think that's all my opinion. Thank you, Pak.
Okay, Pak Bambang Eka, thank you for your answer and your comments. There is some question from chat box here. The question from YouTube. Sorry, hi. Is there a lack of major doing CCUS in Indonesia given there is sufficient CO2 storage capacity? Because this question, I don't know how, I mean, from who and then?
I can answer that maybe.
Sure, Sonny, please.
Yeah. So it's not like that there is a lack of CCUS in Indonesia by the majors. BP already has an announced project. Shell is also having some plans for the Abadi. Then there is ExxonMobil also, who is planning an MOU with Pertamina. So I wouldn't say that there is a lack. What I can say is that in the short term, we do not see many projects, because deployment of CCUS is not always very simple. You have to pre-feasibility studies of where actually what kind of technology you can apply, or and even applying the technology whether works for your facility or not. And then you have in the proximity of your capture location, what are the infrastructure and how you can modify the pipelines so that you can transport the CO2. And although we have identified storage, but actually in real ground, before storing the carbon dioxide, a lot of considerations need to take place. So the monitoring wells, which will actually determine in place that what are the in-ground characteristics, on how much modifications you need to do to the injection well so that you can safely store CO2. So these processes take some time. So that is why, and majors are already on the way. So we already see 3 out of the 6 majors are already implementing or planning of CCUS in single Indonesia. Their major activity currently is focused more on US and Europe, where CCUS has been there for quite a longer period of time, and it has already identified the assets, the storage location, so it is kind of de-risked there. In terms of Southeast Asia, it is a little risky right now, but it has one of the highest emission intensive assets in the region. All of these majors are having, with high CO2 content in the reservoirs. So definitely they are considering that, and maybe in the next 5 to say 6 years of time frame, you would see more deployment of CCUS by these energy majors in the country. So the scenario will change.
Okay, thank you, Sohini. So next question, I think this question to you from Gia. Hi, Ms. Sohini. How do you see the development of GECCS in the next 10 years, especially in terms of economics? Please, Sohini.
Yeah. So BECCS or bioenergy CCS is basically a carbon removal technology where you actually remove the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere when the culture of this biomass takes place, and then this biomass we use for the maybe in power plants or any other purpose. Now bioenergy CCS, although it is carbon removal and you can maybe consider it similar to DAC, but it has very similar methodology like normal traditional CCS. We can apply the same kind of technology like amine solution technology, which is like the dominant capture technology we see associated with the global CCUS project today. You can apply the same transportation facilities. You can apply the same storage sites associated with the projects. So what I see is that it is not quite difficult to deploy it on a mass scale. We are already seeing a huge momentum gained on bioenergy CCS landscape globally. In many of the countries, countries. In fact, not only in US or in Europe, we are seeing even bioenergy CCS is coming up in Latin American countries, which is quite kind of lagging behind in the CCS right now, but it's still coming. So I would say that it is not quite difficult, and if you talk in terms of economics of scale as well, in terms of levelized cost, it has very similar cost range for deploying like traditional CCS around, I guess, it varies between for the capture facilities between 50 to 60 to 70 USD per ton of CO2, which is, so if you can apply traditional CCS, you can apply BECCS as well. Now the outlier which will come here is your DAC, or direct air capture. That is basically a very costly a kind of technology in carbon removal, but bio CCS you can definitely apply.
Okay, thank you, Sohini.
Yeah.
The question to Pa Oki, I think. Yeah, because as Sohini said in her presentation, that Indonesia has huge potential CUS and CCS. Actually, because Indonesia has many oil fields that already depleted, and then we can store in there, even though we can use as a EOR, enhanced oil recovery. So Pak Oki, as a Pertamina technology research and technology innovation here there, are you or do you have any research on this kind of using carbon dioxide for EOR in a certain area already developed in that area, or maybe other areas in Pertamina? Please, Pak Oki, you can elaborate this statement.
Yeah, Pak Salis, thank you, Pak. Indeed, we for CO2, we can see it from two sides, Pak Salis, ladies and gentlemen. The first one is the enhanced recovery. Yeah, we have different initiatives, be it thermal, mostly by steam, Pak, in Pertamina Hulu Rokan, and then we are also developing chemical also in some regions, including also in Rokan. And then we are also having CO2 EOR. Yeah, so CO2 EOR, we have different initiatives in different places. Hopefully that we will have some of them will be implemented soon. This year we will have one EOR implementation, but not CO2. It will be chemical EOR. And then in terms of CO2, of course, we are also having different initiatives, not only for EOR, but also EGR. Yeah, we have one initiative for enhanced gas recovery. And then also for storage, of course, we have different initiatives for CO2 storage, Pak Salis, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, thank you, Pak Aoki Morasa. Beside the technical and business economics that you already had presented in this slide, and then I think you need some legal aspect that you can move your work in your area. So what is the legal aspect that do you need, I mean, from government for implementing your project? Okay, do you have any suggestion to government? Maybe regulation or the other? Oh.
Thank you, Pak Salis, ladies and gentlemen. So basically, Dirjen Migas, Prof. Aryaji already involved us in the development of the regulation, Pak, the Permen for CCUS, and we are actively participated in the discussions. Indeed, this will be one of the most important government regulation that we are expecting. And after that, of course, we are also in discussion with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, KLHK, in which that we have discussed about the different scenario on the verification parts, because the MRV will be also very critical for the development of CCUS, Pak Salis. So we expect that once we have the regulatory framework, we can also settle the MRV, Pak Salis.
Okay, thank you, Pak Oki. Okay, I think Pak Satya already been there here. Pak Satya Yuda, Engineer Satya Widya Yuda, MSc. Currently, he's a member of National Energy Council, or DEN, Dewan Energi Nasional. And he was Wakil Ketua Komisi 1 DPR RI, and also Wakil Ketua Komisi 7 DPR RI, dan juga Wakil Bendahara Umum DPP Partai Golkar. Okay, Pak Satya, are you ready to present?
Sure.
All right. Okay, Pak Satya, please, Pak Satya.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Salis, for giving me a time. You know, even though I'm a bit late, I apologize for that. So I haven't heard any presentation from the panelists before. So, but I assume that you have been discussing a lot, and probably I just want to touch a little bit from the government standpoint and the policy that we are making at the moment. And probably I will short my presentations, you know, since you have discussed with the previous panelists. So here is what I like to see is, you know, actually it's like the competitions between renewables energy and the oil and gas sectors in Indonesia, since Indonesia has been fossil fuel country and fossil fuel economy for so long. So I mean, the rise of the renewables become something that we have to be able to work on nicely and wisely, of course, and see what's the best scenario in terms of the transition energy from fossil to renewables for the Indonesia. So it's going to be a different, in my opinion, you know, from one country to another country, even though and ending up with the same goals that we are aiming to have a net zero emission by 2060. And so what's the government plans in order to achieve the net zero emission by 2060? So here are some of the environment that has been developed by the governments, you know, like you just been discussing here about the implementation of the carbon capture and utilization storage, carbon capture storage, and also, you know, the regulation that now being finalized, like the law of the renewables energies, now still in the process at the parliaments. And as you know, that President has issued the presidential decree on the carbon pricing, where we are now waiting for the ministerial decree to follow it, and also the carbon tax that has been become law, but again, we still need to have a government regulation to implement that law. And currently we are waiting, I think it's quite some time, about the presidential decree on the renewables pricing issues. You know, this is quite substantial in my opinion, because of the way we like to attract the investor to invest more and the renewable energies, based on whether the commerciality can be really friendly, according to the investors. So of course, the price of the renewables energy become major issues. If I go back to what the government of Indonesia been stated, I think probably the speaker has been mentioned that President Joko Widodo, when he attended COP26 back in Glasgow on 1st November 2021, he declares quite clearly here, on the energy sectors, and also asking the international community to help on the climate finance. You see, because Indonesia sees that we cannot just rely on the government's budget, on our own government budgets. Cannot be done just only based on that. So we like to have the developed country to contribute to the mitigation and adaptations of things that we need to do in order to achieve our agreement, the Paris Agreement, back in 2015, and Indonesia is one of the country who signed the agreement. So that's become quite a substantial statement made by Indonesian president at the time in Glasgow. So the developed country cannot just just stay and watch us, but they have also to contribute, in order to help Indonesia to achieve that goal. So that's become a major issue, because if you notice that this was in Norway, there was agreement to disburse around $1 billion, and appear to be they converted from US dollar to NOK. And if you look at the reality, it's only $100 million been disbursed. So it's it's almost been 10 years since previous president Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono was in power. They keep promising about that. So it's quite important for us to see the commitment from developed country toward the developing country like Indonesia. So here some sort of regulation that I just mentioned earlier to all of you, but there's a lot of law need to be revised. Probably some of you has been discussed about the national energy planning that's been issued in 2017. And of course, using all the assumption, included the economic assumption at the time, and based on 2017. So this presidential decree has not been revised, even though we know with the net zero emissions, a lot of things need to be revised accordingly. So that kind of the environment, that kind of ecosystem on the regulations and the legislations, of course, need to be revisited, and to see whether they are fit with our current goals. So here, one of the example, if you look at from the energy mix target and realizations, even though the target is nice, because of 23% by 2025 for renewables, probably from the target standpoint is still reasonable. But the question is, along the way, from 2025 up to 2060, which is are they still consistent with the national energy planning that has been decided or issued as President back in 2017? So that's become an issue in my opinion, and the National Energy Council now considering to revise the planning, the energy mix plannings, because of we knew that 2060 is become the ultimate year that we have to be able to go for net zero emissions. So if you look at, again, this is based on the national energy planning, where I mentioned to you earlier that need to be revised. But again, we cannot say that there is another planning, but we still revisiting about and reviewing the planning that has been decided. But again, since there is no presidential decree to replace this yet, because we are in the making for that, so we still keep referring to what's that had been planned back in 2017. This is like a gas and supply demand. If you look at Indonesia in the future, is gas become the major components of fossil fuel. So we like to have is around 12 BCFD by 2030. Even though in the RUAN or in the national energy planning, it's around 11.6 billions of cubic feet per day for gas in 2030. So there is the new scenario with 12 BCFD, but the previous one is been stated, and the national energy planning is around 11.6, which is not much different between. I mean, it's not much different between the RUAN and also the current goals, with 1 million barrel oil by 2030 and 12 BCFD gas by 2030. But the message here is quite important. because of course, if we are able to manage to 12 BCFD by 2030, we need to have a major infrastructure project to fulfill it. Otherwise, it's quite difficult to deliver the gas if there are no such infrastructures available. So, and here is the potential of the new and renewable energy. I don't want to repeat this. I believe that you have been discussing this, in the previous panels. So we have a lot of abandon of the renewables energy. If you're talking about geothermals, the installed capacity is probably just only 1/10 from the total capacity that we have with potential resources. So bioenergy as well, even though for solar, this is quite amazing. Yeah, solar is, we have 153 megawatt. But if you look at the installed capacity is 153 megawatt, but the resources is 207.8 gigawatt. It's huge and has not been really fully utilized, at the moment with solar. Even though, if you look at from the pricing issues, solar is quite promising, and we like to promote solar energy more and more in order for us to achieve 23% by 2025. That's the only way at the moment to improve our energy mix from the renewable sectors. Yeah, compared with the other type of the renewable energy like geothermals, we need more time to develop. If we are talking about 2025, now it's already 22. So I think from the solar, probably we can improve a lot if we like to catch up with that goal. And this slide is more on the fossil energy resources. It gives you an idea, how much that potential reserve we have in Indonesia, and how do we anticipate with the net zero emissions scenario. So here's this is the big scenario I mentioned to you, that we are not in the position to phasing out the fossil fuel, but we will like to decarbonize the fossil fuels. So here is we put fossil energy plus technology. So any kind of clean technology such as CCUS, CCUS, and net carbon sinks is going to be implemented, in order for us to achieve the net zero emissions. And also acceleration of the renewable energy. I mentioned to you that need to have a solid regulations, improving the pricing issues, in order to accelerate the new and renewable energy, included electric vehicles, battery, the storage, and hydrogens, and also the smart grid, smart energy, plus the energy conservations. So all those scenario basically, for us to be a more energy independent, and also strengthening the energy resources, the natural resources that we have, with the low carbon development and also climate resilience. So, so those are the scenario that we like to implement in Indonesia. So if people asking, what's the Indonesia position on the renewables, on the net zero emissions, so it's quite clear here that we like to decarbonize the fossil fuel instead of phasing out the fossil. Well, phasing out for coal is something that's already on the platform, in stages, starting in 2035. And the thing that I like to share with all of you is Indonesia has not been experienced on the what's so-called the peak emissions. So it's quite different with developed country like most of the EU country, where they have been peak emissions since 1971. US is 1981, but Indonesia none. So Indonesia now we are calculating. We are in the middle to calculate when we are going to reach the peak emissions. So we expect that 2035, is going to happen as a peak emission, considering that 2035, we are anticipating to replace some of the coal-fired plants on the retirement phase. And also, we are also expecting that, the coal-fired plant that probably been delayed, from the original completion of date. So we anticipate with all those factors. So we aiming 2035 has become the peak emissions. If you are using the scenario of the economic growth around 6%, so we are Indonesia going to be out from the middle income trap by 2043, with 6%. Why 6%? Because of before pandemic, we calculate our economic growth around 5.7%. Then we are going to be at the high income countries by 2036. But since because of pandemic and etc., it is going to be later and become 2043. And if you look at when Indonesia become out from the middle income trap, and also we calculating about the peak emission, starting from that, we can anticipate and also calculate, for reaching the net zero emission 2060. So what's the government scenario on that? So we like to, since my president as the chairman of the National Energy Council, asking the council to do a more detailed actions, what we have to do in order for achieving 2060 net zero emission. Here are the 5 years plan scenario, since 2021, 2025, 2026, 23, and etc. until 2051 and 2060. Just look at the renewable energy compositions. So 2021, 2025 is we are expecting 23%. We are able to achieve that target. Of course, we have to build the hydro around 7 gigawatt. We have to be able to build the geothermal become 4 gigawatt. Install capacity at the moment is around 2-point-something gigawatt. So according to that scenario, we should be 4 gigawatt. Solar, from only 126 megawatt, we should be 4 gigawatt. That's a big job. Big job for Indonesia to reach that goal in 2021, 2025. I tell you what, it becomes quite important, all those steps, because if we miss that step to some reason, because of the commercial issues, because of the political dimensions, then it may prolong our net zero emission target. Otherwise, we have to work hard, because of we are aiming, at least the economic growth around 6%, meaning that if we miss that target in 2021, 2025, we have to be able to improve the economic growth even more than 6%. So a lot of homework, but let's give you an idea what the government of Indonesia will be doing in order to achieve the net zero emissions. I think Pak Salis, since I don't think that I still have a couple of slides, but I still thinking that probably has been discussed. So I don't want to repeat with what's been discussed, with the previous panelists. But here the oil and gas sectors, I don't know whether you've been touched this one, how to decarbonize the oil and gas sectors. So at least there are 5 scenarios, 6 scenarios here, from regulation standpoint, from the energy management, and also zero routine flaring, has been implemented quite some time, and also reduce the fugitive emissions, and do the reforestations, because need to have a land to absorb the CO2 produced by the fossil fuel, and also CCS and CCUS. But again, even though the CCS, CCUS has not quite been challenged by the pricing issues, it's still $100 per ton, that's quite high. So we are aiming to have a lower than that. So I spoke in Glasgow at the time, and challenged the United States with that number, because of they are promoting around $100 per ton. So we like to have around $40 per ton. Then CCS and CCUS become more commercially viable in our field in Indonesia. I think that's going to be my last slide. So and I like to explain further on the question and answer. I offer to you, Pak Salis. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Pak Satya Yuda, for your important information and also very comprehensive presentation in your busy time. Thank you, Pak Satya, for sharing with us here. I think all the question, I mean, in here in the text box is about the CCS and CCUS, and some of them I think are related to your presentation also. So you can answer later on, Pak Satya.
Yeah.
Okay, the next the question from Medi Tri Cahyono from DGMI. This question to Pak Bambang Eka Satria from SDM. The first question is, could you please elaborate where is the migas block location as the storage potential of saline aquifer? And the second one, how depth CO2 injected to saline aquifer zone? Please, Pak Bambang.
Thank you, Pak Salis. Thank you, Pak Medi, for the question. Let me answer for the first question. Basically, from our R&D agency, for the saline aquifer has been studied before is in West Java Basin and also in South Sumatra Basin. So it probably the oil gas block in that basin should be suitable for the injection of the CO2 into the saline aquifer. And for the second question, let me talking about more technical, Pak Salis. As we know that the CO2 is super critical. They have three phase, could be gas, could be fluid, and could be solid. So it will be depend on the critical pressure. If we're talking about the depth, it's not only the depth factor as for the injection target. We should consider about the temperature and also the density regarding for the CO2. As we know that below 800 meters of the subsurface, there will be a supercritical. The CO2 will be into the liquid phase. That should be the consideration. And the second one, for the injection target, we must know about the caprock capability. I mean the total the height of the caprock, because the caprock will be the like a barrier for the CO2 plumb into the rise of the plumb of the CO2 into the surrounding area. And the third is about the potable or freshwater layer in the subsurface. That should be the consideration. The injection target should be far more below than the potable water layer or the freshwater layer. Why? That's important because we avoid that CO2 that we injected will be contamination the freshwater. I think this is not some exact number, Pak Salis. There's some another point should be considered, like action member, like temperature and also the density. I think that's all my answer, Pak Salis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Bambang Eka. So I think this question also related to the question from Huri Novrian. This is from SBM ITB. The question from WhatsApp. This is related to the previous question. He said that on the Middle East largest LNG producers, the sour gas or rich S2S underground storage facility established since 2 decades ago. So far, no issue, but they plan to change it for CO2 storage. Their underground layer formation is mostly rock and allow it to be best storage facility. And the question is, how about Indonesian underground layer formation? Is it strong enough to prevent high pressure CO2 for gas leakage? So because he's very worried about next Lapindo issues will emerge in this issue. So please advise Pak Bambang. I think related to the previous question.
Thank you, Pak Saris. Regarding about the leak of the storage reservoir, yes, we developed. Like we know, some country that have been proven injection target, such as Norway or USA, they have standard for the monitoring. They have some proven monitoring standard to detect any possibility of the leakage of the CO2 into the atmosphere, or maybe into the freshwater layer. What is the most important is we must know about the capability to handle the CO2 injection. That's the most important. The second is we must know the CO2 plumb. CO2 plumb, the migration of the CO2 into the surrounding area when we inject the CO2, that we should be know. So basically, before we inject the CO2, we build some model. Model will be static and dynamic model. Based on that model, we can predict is the CO2 we inject is possibility to leak or not. And also we develop the monitoring system in the surface to detect the CO2 itself. And also maybe we build some monitoring well surround the injection of CO2 well. I think that's all my answer, Pak.
Okay, Pak Bambang.
Silas.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Please, Soini.
Yeah. In addition to what Bambang said, I would like to add few points. So generally, in terms of depleted or oil and gas fields, the cap rock has a main role. But if it is a saline aquifer, it is not always the case that it has a cap rock, which basically seals so that the leakage doesn't occur. So in those cases, what comes into play is the how CO2 reacts with the water or the saline water or the minerals which is there in the saline water in that aquifer. So and it forms something called solubility trapping. So that is also one of the mechanism that comes into play, that whether CO2 can form stable minerals with already the saline ions or salt ions which are there in the aquifer or not. So that kind of trapping also comes into play, and mainly the depth range and the pressure temperature range in which CO2 can stay in a supercritical state, as Bambang mentioned, is it starts with 800 meters and generally it extends up to 2500 meters. So that is the general range that we see. But sometimes, of course, there are projects like there in offshore Brazil in Santos, where it actually injects CO2 in reservoirs which are at 5,500 to 6,000 meters of depth. That is very high, and that is done under some specialized conditions. So the CO2 stays in supercritical state, and the pressure and the temperature are also managed in such a way, because generally the pressure and the temperature for CO2 to remain in supercritical state is more than 31 degrees Celsius, and I guess it around 65 to 70 bars. So this has to be maintained, but general range in which ideally it forms in supercritical state is 800 to 2500 meters. And there are mainly two types of trapping so that CO2 is not leaked. Is if it has a cap rock, you have to understand. So this monitoring wells and which are built before you actually build this injection wells help you to identify what the subsurface lithology looks like. So they inject some amount of CO2 and see that how it is reacting with the already existing minerals and whether it is leaking or not. So such kind of mechanisms also come to play when, in case of mainly saline aquifers, when it doesn't have a cap rock. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Soini. We are fortunate have here master of applied geological science. So Soini can explain more detail on technical aspects. Thank you, Soini. I think I hope that answer the question from Mehdi. So the next question from Pak Brett Pak Brett asked to Mbak Sohini. Do you think that better methane emission management may have a bigger effect on total GHG reduction than CCS in Indonesia and in Asia in general? Please.
Okay. So with only methane reduction, firstly, you are not going to reach your net zero goals. You need to reduce the CO2 emissions as well, which is one of the key emissions that is there associated with Southeast Asia, where, you know, are heavily reliant on fossil fuels, mainly gas or coal power, etc. And secondly, so mainly all these oil and gas reservoirs which are there in the Southeast Asian continent, even in Indonesia, have high content of CO2 in the reservoirs. So when you want to actually produce hydrocarbons from such reservoirs, you can't afford for the CO2 to be emitted, because it can cause a lot of damage. Even if I don't consider the greenhouse part of things, it can cause a lot of corrosion damages and other damages, which actually whom you are going to sell it, they won't allow it. And a lot of companies globally, like mainly the Japanese players and all, they are asking for low carbon or zero carbon emission LNG. So ultimately you have to not because of you can, but you have to, in order to sustain the business, reduce the emission of CO2. So what I think is that CO2 emission reduction from a Southeast Asian point of view, both in terms of the gas reservoirs where there is high CO2 content, and also from a business point of view, is very important. And definitely I agree that methane management is also a key, a low hanging fruit, and it can also be applied because it is mainly natural gas, right? So it can be definitely captured and can be used as a revenue stream as well. But only concentrating on methane reduction and excluding CO2 from an highly fossil fuel intensive region won't help you, first, to deliver your business goals, and secondly, the emission targets. So you can't actually deduct CCS from your plans, at least from Southeast Asian point of view. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you, Soini.
Okay, I have additional information about this question. Actually, in Indonesia, we have a target to reduce the gas flare, zero routine flare in 2030. That will be low-hanging fruit for the methane emission. The second one is to, to reduce the fugitive methane emission by modification of some equipment that will be leakage, and also we enhance our encourage oil and gas contractor to utilize gas for their own use or maybe for another utilization. I think that's my information, additional information.
Okay, thank you, Pak Bambang, for your additional information from Kitchen Migas. Okay, before we close this event, I think one question to Pak Satya here. This is the question from myself. When you mentioned about the new and renewable energy, you mentioned about solar energy that's very potential in Indonesia. But people said that solar is discontinuity in the day and night. So we need some storage. So is there any policy or any target in Dewan Energi Nasional for when the storage could be maybe in place and then replace all of the infrastructure? And the second one is why you didn't mention about nuclear energy, Pak Satya, please, Pak.
Yeah, well, okay. Thank you very much, Pak Salis, for your questions. Yeah, if you look at the renewable energy as a whole, intermittency has become a major issues, right? Solar, because of it depends on how much that sun will still shine. And if you look at winds also, it depends on how strong wind will be. And if you just name it, probably geothermal is the only renewable energy that could fight with the intermittency because of quite relatively stable. So the storage, the storage has become important. So why Indonesia, develops what so-called like the storage ecosystems? So we form the 3 companies, MinID, PLN, and Pertamina, for developing battery. Hopefully that it helps a lot for combating with the intermittence on the solar panels and other renewable energy sources. So I think this has become at least something that we are thinking about and trying to find best solutions. Because of the solar, if you look at now from the pricing standpoint, it's around 5 cents per kilowatt hours, 3 to 5 cents. Even the Middle East is around 2 cents. But if plus storage, it increased around 2 or 3 cents per kilowatt hours, and become a little bit expensive. If we are putting the battery in it, on that pricing mechanism, pricing scheme. So that's one. And then the second is your question with related to nuclear. If you look at in detail, probably my slide is too small. If you look at the 5 years plan from 2021 up to 2060, it appears there in 2040 there is a plan for nuclear. Nuclear has to be on stream by 2040. And even now, the government has developed the organization called NEPIO. And NEPIO is like an organization who tackle for the preparation of developing the nuclear power stations. I think that is a good movement compared with the previous administration, that now the government has a strong and solid plan to develop nuclear power plant. Even though our national energy policy need to be revised accordingly, because we like to revise the words that nuclear is the last option. There is a misinterpretation with the last option. So we like to change it into viable options, because we don't want that our neighbors build the nuclear power station while Indonesia never considering it. Because if once a neighbor build a nuclear power plants, like or not, Indonesia will be affected, with the waste, with everything associated with nuclear power station. So we like to have a nuclear power station instead. But when, according to the plan that I already mentioned, is around 2040. That's my answer, Pak Salis.
Okay, thank you, Pak Satya. I think that's the last question and also last answer. Thank you so much for all speakers today, Pak Bambang, Pak Bambang Eka Satria, on behalf of Directorate Dijen Migas, and also he was replacing Pak Tudukari Aji as Director General of Migas, and Pak Oki Muraza, thank you so much, and also Miss Sohini Katurji, and Pak Satya Widya Yuda. I also want to thank all participants in this room and also through YouTube online, through Zooms, and also the question from WhatsApp, and all committees here from IGS. Thank you for your hard work for conducting this event. Lunch and talk almost more than 2 hours, and all the sponsor the IGS members. Thank you so much. We will see you next time. But before that, I want to have some closing statement or closing remark from all speakers here, from Pak Bambang Eka, then Pak Oki Muraza, and later on from Ms. Sohini, and also Pak Satya. Please, Pak Bambang Eka, for your closing remark.
Thank you, Pak Salis. My closing remark is we still need fossil fuel, especially gas, for the energy mix in Indonesia before the renewable is ready to deploy 100%. The second one is the GTS and GTS is the proven technology to mitigate the greenhouse gas emission. I think that's all, Pak Salis. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Bambang Eka. Convey my regret to Pak Tutuka Aryaji for your support. Okay, next Pak Oki Muraza, please. Still join with us, Pak Oki?
Siap, Pak Salis.
Okay, please. If you have any comment or remark in the closing remark here, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Pak Salis, for organizing this webinar, and also for other speaker and also organizer, Pak Bambang, Pak Satya, Bu Sohini. So indeed, the CCUS is very important part of decarbonization, in addition to a lot of initiatives that we have for renewable energy. However, of course, CCUS is considered as a high capex project. Indeed, so we need to think how to finance it. So the financing is one thing which is very important to be studied. And secondly, of course, the technology, be it the technology to capture CO2, technology to transport, and also technology to inject, and for which type of application. So technology is the second pillar. And of course, the regulatory framework is also very important, in which that we expect that the government will help us in order to maximize our profitability from CCUS project. Because, for instance, in the joint credit mechanism, there will be a portion of the counterparts, for instance, who will finance the project. While in Indonesia, we also need the carbon credit to be claimed, for decarbonization, for net zero, etc. I think those are our suggestion, Pak Salis, Bapak Ibu.
Okay, thank you, Pak Oki Muraza. The next from Prestart Energy, Ibu Sohini, please.
Thank you for such a great session. All to my co-speakers, great presentation and great conversation. I have seen, as per my last remarks would be, Southeast Asia has grown remarkably in the CCUS landscape in the last year. In fact, all the projects that I have talked about today, all the farm, everything has been in place 2021 onwards, and the momentum has been huge in even, considering 1 year of time frame. And yes, definitely, policies, regulations, finances, credits are a key binding thing that every immature technology has to deploy, and same goes for CCUS. But I think for now, especially from Indonesian point of view, specifically, who is like the dominant in CCUS currently in Southeast Asia, you are basically using the CO2 for enhanced hydrocarbon recovery. That kind of also generates a revenue stream for the projects. So that is kind of reduces the risk factor associated with the projects as well. So definitely, I think that is going to be a key booster for the growth of this technology in the region, at least in the short term. And as we see more regulations and farm policies come in place with the credits which you can use it, in the long term, the permanent sequestration that will encompass the larger part of the CCUS will come into action. That would be my last remarks.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Sohini. Pak Satya, do you have any?
Yeah, well, probably very short, because of net zero emission, according to the plan, is unavoidable. Yeah, it has to be worked together. cannot be done solely by one ministry. From the government standpoint, it has to be done through other ministries as well. So in order for us to achieve that goal, so the work together has become important factors. Collaborations between the technology, and the regulations, as well as the expertise need to be in place. This is something that we have to be able to gather together in order to achieve that goal. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Pak Satya. Thank you all. Here, Pak Didi, as chairman of IGS, thank you so much for attending this event in here. Pak Hari, Bu Yeni, Pak Teni, and all participants here, Pak Johadi, and also Nadia, Ade, Budi. Thank you for your support and the friends here. I think the sponsor here from executive member, Pertamina, Mitsubishi Corporation, PGN, Pupuk Kaltim, Inpex, ANI, Pertamina Gas, LNG Japan, PLN Gas and Geothermal, ConocoPhillips, Nusantara Gas, Badak LNG, Transgasindo, Pertamina Sanga-Sanga, GTS International, Pertamina Power Indonesia, Total, Pertamina Hulu Mahakam, Donggi Senoro, Pertamina, Pertagas Niaga, Evonik, Go LNG, Indonesia, and Widiawan and partners. Thank you and see you next time. Bye-bye. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you all. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Terima kasih Pak Satya, Pak Bambang, terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, Soini. Arigato
Bye.
Vijay.
Thank you very much. Bye.
All right,
Thank you.
everyone in